Hey everyone, welcome back to Blurred Lines podcast, where we dive into true crime, conspiracy theories, and the truth behind the gossip. I'm your host, Ashley, or some of you guys also may know me by Ashtootrippy, and today is our updates episode. So this is one of our case updates episodes where we'll get into covering multiple cases that have seen major developments, shocking revelations, and new evidence, arrests, court proceedings, and everything that happens right now that has the true crime community talking. And as always, our goal here is to break down the facts, discuss the updates, and examine the details that often get lost in the headlines. And some of these stories you've heard us cover before. We're going to get into all of that today, and we're also going to get into a few new cases that you may have not heard of. So, if you guys are ready for this episode, grab your coffee, your energy drink, your favorite snack, or whatever gets you through your day, because we got a lot to unpack. Now, before we jump into today's episode, I just want to remind you guys, don't forget to follow me on all my social media platforms under Ashtootrippy for not only bonus content, but also more content in regards to gossip, true crime, and so much more. And of course, you'll get everything on all my social media sites, including my TikTok, Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube. You'll get different content in regards to true crime and gossip, and of course, the blurred lines in between, as well as you will hear updates sooner, because unfortunately I can't jump on here and record a podcast all the time. So over there on social media, it's way easier for me, and that's pretty much my full-time job. Before we get into this episode, I just want to give you a brief content warning. This episode contains discussions of murder, missing persons cases, violence, abuse, and other disturbing topics that may be upsetting to some listeners. Listener discretion is strongly advised. Before I forget, if you enjoy the podcast, be sure to follow, subscribe, and leave a review, and share the show with a friend or two. It really helps support us independent creators and helps more people discover Blurred Lines podcast. Now, y'all know what time it is. Let's talk about it. All right, so let's start with one of the most talked about cases in true crime and social media over the last year. The case of Karmelo Anthony and the killing of Austin Metcalf. For anyone who may not be familiar with this case, this all started on April 2nd, 2025, during a high school track meet in Frisco, Texas. What began as a dispute under a team tent during a weather delay ended with a 17-year-old Austin Metcalf being fatally stabbed in the chest. Karmelo Anthony, who was only 17 at the time, admitted he stabbed Austin, but claimed he acted in self-defense. The case quickly exploded across social media, becoming one of the most diverse true crime cases in recent memory. Questions about self-defense, race, media coverage, fundraising campaigns, and the justice system all became part of the conversation. Now for the updates. So after months of legal proceedings, the trial finally began in June, so this month of 2026. Jurors heard testimonies from eyewitnesses, first responders, medical experts, and students who were present that day. Several witnesses testify that Anthony was the aggressor during the confrontation, while the defense argued he feared for his safety and made a split-second decision during a physical altercation. One of the biggest developments came when newly released surveillance footage and police body cam footage were shown during and after the trial. The videos captured the chaotic moments following the stabbing and Anthony's interactions with officers. In the footage, Anthony can be heard admitting he stabbed Austin while continuing to claim that Austin had put his hands on him first. The prosecution argued this was not self-defense and described the stabbing as an intentional act. The defense maintained that Anthony feared he was about to be attacked and reacted in the heat of the moment. Ultimately, the jury rejected the self-defense argument. On June 9th, 2026, Karmelo Anthony was found guilty of murder. The following day, a Collin County jury sentenced him to 35 years in prison. Prosecutors said justice had been served, while Anthony's legal team immediately signaled plans to appeal the conviction. Since the verdict, additional evidence from the case has been released publicly, including body cam footage, surveillance videos, photographs from the investigation, and details presented during trial testimony. Those releases have reignited debate online, with supporters of both families continuing to argue over what happened that day. And that's where things are right now. Karmelo Anthony is serving a 35-year sentence for the murder of Austin Metcalf, but the legal battle appears far from over. Anthony's supporters and attorneys have indicated they intend to continue pursuing appeals, while Austin's family says they are focused on honoring his memory and moving forward after a tragedy that changed their lives forever. Now, this case continues to spark intense discussion, and no matter where people stand on it, one fact remains unchanged. A young man lost his life at what should have been an ordinary high school track meet, and two families will forever live with the consequences of that day. Now, I wanted to get into this a little bit because something very interesting about this. So that's just kind of the meat and potatoes of this story. But I wanted to kind of throw in what's been going on as well, as far as not only gossip, but those blurred lines in between the truth and gossip. So after the verdict was given that he was guilty and he was sentenced to the 35 years, his family is still saying he's innocent. And a lot of people, I'm not going to say all of the African American community has done this, but a lot of them, including his family, have basically said that, if this kid put his hands on him, he was justified. That is not true. With self-defense, if you feel threatened and you see that person has a weapon, and you then have a weapon and you get there first before they do anything to you, that is self-defense. However, with Austin Metcalf, he did not have any kind of weapon. He did not have anything. All he had was him. Like, he was, just fists. And for Karmelo Anthony to literally just pull out a knife and stab him only because he pushed him, that's extreme. That's extreme to another level. And you can't use race in this. Unfortunately, I do think that there was a little bit of animosity. I don't think it was towards race. I think it was just because they were from different schools and how maybe rivals in a way as well. But also very interesting to know is when all this happened, a lot of people did think that it was racially motivated. A lot of people did, because nobody knew the facts of the case, right? Well, a GoFundMe was put up for Karmelo Anthony, and they raised $500,000, a little more over $500,000. And this was for his said legal team. But what I don't understand is he had a public defender. So there was nothing paid to any kind of legal team in any way, shape, or form. I'm sure he had restitution to pay and things like that. But at the end of the day, not even a quarter of that money was used for what it was. Now, they did move because they said that they were threatened in the area they lived in. His mother did purchase a vehicle. All this, that, and the other. But now he has put in an appeal for another trial and said that he does not have the funds to basically put all that in. So he's saying that he's basically poor. After his family got over $500,000 because everybody thought that this was racially motivated. It's insane. I'm going to continue following this case. This is something I may do a deep dive on. A lot of these cases we're covering today that you may have heard of, we're going to do deep dives on. So just be prepared for that. Now, our next update isn't exactly a new development in court, but it is a case that's suddenly back in the spotlight thanks to Netflix's newest true crime documentary, Maternal Instinct. And honestly, if you've watched it already, you probably understand why people can't stop talking about it. The documentary revisits one of the most disturbing cases in recent memory, the case of Taylor Parker, a Texas woman who spent months faking a pregnancy before carrying out a plan that investigators describe as calculated and horrifying. Back in 2020, Parker convinced family, friends, and even her boyfriend that she was pregnant. Prosecutors later revealed she had gone to extraordinary lengths to maintain the lie, including faking ultrasound images, social media posts, baby showers, and even a silicone pregnancy belly. The deception reportedly lasted for nearly 10 months. As her fake due date approached, the lies began closing in on her. On October 9th, 2020, prosecutors say Parker went to the home of 21-year-old Reagan Simmons Hancock, who was approximately 35 weeks pregnant. Reagan was brutally attacked and killed, and her unborn daughter, Braxlyn, was taken from her womb. Tragically, neither Reagan nor the baby survived. The case took an even stranger turn when Parker was pulled over shortly afterward by a state trooper. She claimed she had just given birth on the side of the road and that the baby was hers. Investigators quickly determined that wasn't true, and her entire story unraveled within hours. Fast forward to today. The reason we're talking about this case again is Netflix documentary Maternal Instinct, which premiered in June of this year, so just this month. The film has introduced the case to a whole new audience, and social media has absolutely exploded with reactions. Many viewers are calling it one of the most disturbing true crime documentaries Netflix has ever released. But I beg to differ, honestly, because there is a lot of disturbing documentaries Netflix has released over this past year. One thing that makes the documentary different that the filmmakers chose not to interview Taylor Parker directly. Director Jessica Dimmock explained that the decision was made to keep the focus on Reagan, her family, and the people whose lives were devastated by the crime, rather than giving Parker another platform, which amen to that. As for where Taylor Parker is today, she remains on Texas death row after being convicted of capital murder and sentenced to death in 2022. Courts have continued to uphold her conviction, although, like most death penalty cases, the appeals process is ongoing and could continue for years. The documentary has also reignited conversations about Parker's mental state. During the trial, experts debated whether mental illness played a role, but prosecutors argued the crime showed extensive planning and premeditation. Evidence presented in court included months of online research, false medical records, and carefully constructed pregnancy hoax. No matter how many times this case is discussed, it's difficult to wrap your mind around. At the center of all the headlines, documentaries, and court proceedings is Reagan Simmons Hancock, a young mother whose life was taken in a crime that shocked the entire country. And now, thanks to Maternal Instinct over on Netflix, a whole new generation of true crime viewers is learning about a case many investigators still describe as one of the most disturbing they've ever seen. This case is so disturbing. I've found out so much stuff ever since watching the documentary. I found out that while she's in prison, she also has been lying. She's tried to con guards. She's even wrote to the FBI saying that she's like an informant or something. This girl's lies are top tier. Like, this is some Gypsy Rose Blanchard type lying in the making. Like, it's so crazy to think. Her ex-husband as well, who she was having the baby with, that wasn't really a baby, that it was a fake pregnancy, because she actually had a hysterectomy previously because she had some issues. He basically has been under fire because a lot of people think that he was just really gullible, and in all reality, the dude was just a nice dude. He didn't want to let her down. He didn't want to break up with her, but he knew shit was going on. He knew some stuff was wrong, but he didn't want to be wrong in what the stuff was wrong. You know what I mean? Like, he didn't want to say you're not pregnant and her end up being pregnant. If you guys have a minute, definitely go watch Maternal Instinct over on Netflix. It is definitely a must watch, and you will go down a rabbit hole after, trust me. Now, next up, we are talking about one of the most infamous serial killer cases in modern American history, the Gilgo Beach murders. And honestly, after years of speculation, theories, documentaries, and unanswered questions, 2026 has brought some of the biggest developments we've ever seen in this case. For those unfamiliar, the Gilgo Beach case dates back to 2010, when authorities discovered multiple sets of human remains along Ocean Parkway on Long Island, New York. Over time, investigators identified numerous victims, many of whom were young women and sex workers who had disappeared years earlier. For more than a decade, the case remained one of America's biggest unsolved serial killer mysteries. Then in July of 2023, investigators arrested Long Island architect Rex Heuermann. The prosecutors began linking him to multiple murders through DNA evidence, cell phone records, internet searches, witness statements, and other forensic evidence. Now let's get into some of the updates. One of the biggest bombshells came in April of this year, 2026, when Rex Heuermann officially pleaded guilty to 7 murders and admitted responsibility for an 8th victim. For years, many expected lengthy trials, but instead, Heuermann confessed to killing 8 women, spanning nearly 2 decades. According to prosecutors, the victims included Melissa Barthelemy, Megan Waterman, Amber Costello, Marion Bernard Barnes, Jessica Taylor, Valerie Mack, Sandra Castilla, and Karen Vergetta. Investigators say many of the women were targeted while working as escorts before being strangled and their bodies disposed of in remote locations across Long Island. The guilty plea shocked many observers because it meant the families would finally get answers without enduring a lengthy trial. It also confirmed what investigators had been building toward for years, that the man many refer to as the Gilgo Beach Serial Killer was in fact Rex Heuermann. Then came the sentencing. On June 17th of 2026, family members of the victims filed the courtroom and confronted Heuermann directly. Many described decades of grief, anger, and unanswered questions. Several relatives spoke about how the murders permanently changed their lives and demanded accountability from the man responsible. The judge ultimately sentenced Heuermann to life in prison without the possibility of parole. In addition to multiple life sentences, the court imposed additional conservative prison terms that ensure he will spend the rest of his life behind bars. Another major development involved the disturbing evidence revealed during the investigation. Prosecutors described extensive planning documents allegedly found on the Heuermann's devices that outlined methods of targeting, controlling, and disposing of victims. Investigators have said the evidence demonstrated significant planning and organization behind the crimes. Even with the guilty plea and sentencing, questions do still remain. Authorities have acknowledged that investigators continue to examine whether Heuermann could be connected to additional crimes behind the 8 murders he admitted to. Some investigators and attorneys involved in the case believe there may still be unanswered questions about other victims. What makes this case so significant is that for years, many people believed the Gilgo Beach mystery might never be solved. Families waited decades for answers. Detectives retired without seeing an arrest. Entire documentaries were made about the possibility that the killer would never be identified. Now, after years of investigation, confessions, and a life sentence, one of America's most notorious serial killer cases has finally reached a major conclusion. But even now, many believe the story isn't completely over, because when a serial killer operates undetected for decades, the question that always lingers is this: did investigators find every victim? Or are there still secrets that haven't been uncovered yet? Now let's talk about a case that many of you have been following closely, especially those here in New Mexico: the disappearance of Melissa Casias. For nearly a year, Melissa's family searched for answers after she vanished under circumstances that many people find incredibly strange. Melissa Casias, a 53-year-old Los Alamos National Laboratory employee and mother, disappeared on June 26th of 2025. That day, she dropped lunch off for her daughter, told family members she planned to work from home, and was later seen walking along State Road 518 near Taos. What immediately concerned investigators and her loved ones was that she left behind many of her personal belongings, including her purse, identification, as well as her cell phone. For months, the case generated widespread attention. Search efforts were conducted, investigators had followed leads, and Melissa's family repeatedly pushed for answers while trying to determine whether she disappeared voluntarily or if something more sinister had happened. Then came a major development. On May 28th of 2026, a hiker discovered human remains in the McGaffey Ridge area of Carson National Forest near Rio Chiquito. A handgun was reportedly found near the remains. Following forensic examination, New Mexico State Police confirmed the remains belonged to Melissa Casias. The discovery brought an answer to one of the biggest questions in the case: where Melissa was, but unfortunately created so many more. According to investigators, the remains were found in a remote area approximately 6 miles from her home. Melissa's family later stated that the location was within an area they believed had been searched previously during the investigation, which immediately sparked additional questions among those following the case. As of now, authorities have not publicly determined the official cause or manner of death. The Office of the Medical Investigator continues to conduct examinations, and state police have emphasized that the investigation remains active and ongoing. Recent reports added even more mystery to the situation. Some sources have reported investigators are examining evidence, including a skull fracture and a handgun found near the remains. However, officials have not announced whether Melissa's death was the result of a suicide, an accident, natural causes, or foul play. At this point, investigators say they are still awaiting additional forensic findings. The discovery has also reignited discussions online because Melissa worked at Los Alamos National Laboratory. Some internet users have attempted to connect her disappearance to a broader theories involving missing scientists and government employees. It's important to note that authorities have not announced any evidence linking Melissa's case to any larger pattern or conspiracy. Today, the biggest update is that Melissa has been found, but the investigation is far from over. Her family has continued to seek answers regarding exactly what happened during the year she was missing and how she ultimately ended up in the forest where her remains were discovered. This is one of those cases where finding someone doesn't necessarily bring closure. In many ways, it opens an entire new chapter of questions that investigators are still working to answer. We'll continue to follow the story and any future developments as they become available. This is one of the cases that I do want to do a deep dive on. There is a lot more to this case. There's a lot with like the cell phone. I guess it was like completely factory reset but left at home. And there's just a lot of things in this case I think need to be touched on. It does blur the lines into conspiracy theories, considering she did work at Los Alamos National Labs, which is a government-run facility. One of the cases that is taking over headlines is the case of the singer David, or David Anthony Burke, as we all should know him. So if you've been following this case online, you've probably seen the case everywhere over the last few months. But for those of you guys that are unfamiliar, Burke was arrested in April of 2026, just this year, in connection with the death of 14-year-old Celeste Rivas Hernandez. The case first gained national attention after Celeste's remains were discovered inside a Tesla registered to Burke that had been impounded in Los Angeles. Authorities later identified the remains as Celeste, who had been missing for more than a year. Prosecutors have charged Burke with first-degree murder along with additional charges related to alleged sexual abuse of a minor and mutilation of human remains. Prosecutors alleged Burke and Celeste knew each other for years and claimed she was killed after threatening to expose their alleged relationship. Burke has pleaded not guilty to all charges and continues to maintain his innocence. This is a case that I'm looking forward to actually giving you guys a full episode on, but I am waiting till the trial runs through and all that stuff, which hopefully we will see some changes in the trial within the coming months, but as of right now, it is still being continued. But let's go ahead and get into those updates. So one of the biggest developments is that the preliminary hearing, which was expected to reveal significant evidence in the case, has been delayed yet again. Burke's attorney requested additional time to review the massive amount of evidence collected by prosecutors. According to court filings, investigators have turned over an enormous amount of digital evidence. The prosecutors have indicated the total discovery could exceed 40 terabytes of data. Yeah, that's a lot. The preliminary hearing is now scheduled for June 29th, 2026, and is expected to last several days. During that hearing, prosecutors will begin presenting evidence they believe establishes probable cause for the case and move toward trial. Court documents released earlier this year also revealed some of the evidence prosecutors say they have gathered. According to filings, investigators recovered forensic evidence, digital records, purchase receipts, and other material they believe connect Burke to Celeste's murder. The defense has challenged proportions of the evidence and has accused prosecutors of delaying the release of certain forensic and DNA findings. Another major development came when prosecutors publicly outlined additional allegations involving child sexual abuse material, allegedly discovered during the investigation. Burke's legal team has strongly denied the allegations against him and continued to argue that the evidence does not prove he committed murder. As of right now, Burke remains jailed without bond while awaiting for the next phase of the case. No trial date has been set as of right now. The upcoming preliminary hearing could be one of the most important moments so far because it may provide the public with a much clearer picture of evidence both sides intend to present. This case has captured so much attention because it involved a rising music star, disturbing allegations, and a victim whose family is still seeking justice. But it's also important to remember that the criminal proceedings are still ongoing. Prosecutors must prove their case, and Burke remains presumed innocent unless and until he is convicted. We'll continue following this case because there are likely to be major developments once that preliminary hearing begins and additional evidence becomes public. And honestly, this is one of those cases where every new court filing seems to raise even more questions than answers. And that is part of the reason that I do want to wait to cover this case, because I think that if I were to cover it now, we would see a lot of the speculation and not really the facts. And I want to make sure we have the facts. Now, I also wanted to add in there that there is a lot of documentaries that are going to be coming out in regards to this. We know how media jumps on this type of thing. I guess Celeste Rivas Hernandez family have been contacted in regards to participating, and they have declined. Now, unfortunately, cameras are not allowed in the courtroom. We kind of know from reporters of how David Anthony Burke is reacting to all this. He doesn't look that great, but they did state that he was clean shaven. He did get a haircut like he had requested the previous one. So hopefully this does move forward. I do understand if it doesn't because there is a lot of evidence, but at the same time, it's like he's cooked. And I hope California definitely uses him as an example for this type of behavior. And that is going to wrap up this month's Case Updates episode of Blurred Lines podcast. As always, I want to thank each and every one of you for spending part of your day with me, whether you're listening while you're driving, working, cleaning, relaxing, or falling down another true crime rabbit hole. I appreciate each and every one of you guys being here. We covered a lot today, from the latest developments in the Karmelo Anthony case to the renewed attention on Taylor Parker through Netflix's Maternal Instinct, the major updates in the Gilgo Beach Serial Killer investigation, and the discovery of Melissa Casias, as well as the ongoing legal proceedings involved in the David Anthony Burke case. And as we always say here on Blurred Lines, these stories are constantly evolving. New evidence is uncovered, court hearings happen, appeals are filed, and sometimes the biggest developments come when we least expect them. Now, if you enjoyed today's episode, please take a moment to follow the podcast, subscribe wherever you're listening, and leave a rate and review. It may seem small, but it truly helps the show reach more listeners and allows us to continue bringing you these deep dives and case updates every single month. Don't forget to follow me on all my socials under Ashtootrippy for additional case updates, behind the scenes content, clips from the podcast, and discussions that don't always make it into the full episode. And again, I cover a lot on my social media. You guys will definitely like it, so be sure you're following me. And just as another reminder, our monthly case updates episodes drop on the last Friday of every month. So if you want to stay caught up on the biggest developments happening in true crime, make sure you're subscribed so you never miss an episode. Until next time, stay curious, stay aware, and question everything. And remember, sometimes the truth is hidden in the blurred lines. I'm Ashley, also known as Ashtootrippy, and this has been Blurred Lines Podcast. Take care, everyone, and we'll talk about it next time. Bye, guys.